Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. 2 South African soldiers have been killed and 3 others injured after a mortar bomb hit one of their military bases in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where its troops were sent to quell violence. All these are the first casualties since the South African army began deploying to DR Congo last December. The attack happened in Sake, about 27 kilometers west of Goma, the main city. The South African army said in a statement that it was the result of an indirect fire, implying that the base was not targeted, but it says further investigations will be conducted to determine the basis of the incident. South Africa's military, together with troops from Tanzania and Malawi, are part of the Southern African Mission in DR Congo, SAMI DRC, which was deployed to assist the government to bring peace, security and stability in the restive eastern region of the country. In the meantime, anti-Western demonstrations have rocked the Democratic Republic of Congo, with protesters denouncing what they say is silence in the international community over the deaths caused by fighting between M23 rebels and the Congolese army. Demonstrators burnt tires and the flags of the US and Belgium near Western embassies and the headquarters of MONUSCO, and that's the UN mission in the country. They allege Western countries are supporting Rwanda, that is accused of backing the Tutsi-led M23 rebellion in the North Kivu province. The Congolese government had to send police to protect the embassies and UN headquarters. However, the government did not denounce the violence against its Western partners. Or fighting between government forces and the M23 in the eastern North Kivu province has escalated recently and is drawing closer to its capital, Goma. The group launched the offensive in late 2021, capturing swaths of the province and driving over 1 million people out of their homes. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights is calling on the authorities in Senegal to ensure that they uphold the long-held tradition of democracy and respect for human rights. Well, this follows reports of the use of force against protesters and restrictions on civic space. Liz Throssell, OHCHR spokesperson, said the commission is deeply concerned about the tense situation in Senegal following suspension of the presidential election slated for the 25th of February.
We are deeply concerned about the tense situation in Senegal following suspension of the presidential election that was slated for the 25th of February. At least 3 young men were killed during protests, and at least 266 people have reportedly been arrested across the country, including journalists. Amid rising tensions and reports of planned further protests, it's crucial that the authorities unequivocally order the security forces to respect and ensure human rights, including the rights to freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly. We also urge all actors to refrain from resorting to violence. Given the challenges and concerns related to the circumstances surrounding the postponement of the election, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk calls on the government to ensure that the proposed national dialogue be as broad-based as possible and ensure genuine participation of opposition groups, women, youth and marginalised groups.
Authorities in Somalia have banned the use of face masks in the capital, Mogadishu, and this is due to security concerns. Well, according to spokesperson of the Mogadishu administration, Saleh Deri, the face masks are being used by criminals to hide their identity and carry out illegal activity. Authorities have also outlawed wearing of hats and carrying weapons in public transport, but the traditional Sunna hats worn by elders are exempt from the ban. Well, the decision was made during a recent security meeting in Mogadishu chaired by President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. Somalia has long been plagued by insecurity, with the main threats coming from the Al-Shabaab militant group. Or in Ghana now, President Nana Akufo-Addo has reshuffled his cabinet, replacing Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta as the West African country endures its worst economic crisis. Mr. Ofori-Atta is an ex-banker and has been in office since 2017 and has faced criticism for Ghana's financial crisis. Well, at the height of the crisis in 2022, inflation set to surpass 50% and the government defaulted on loan payments. President Akufo-Addo now replaced 12 other ministers in Wednesday's cabinet reshuffle, which precedes Ghana's December presidential elections. Joining us now for more on this story is Maxwell Agbagba. He's the Joy News TV correspondent in Accra, Ghana. Hello, Maxwell. Thank you for your time on our program.
Thank you, Lyle.
Well, help us understand what the president is trying to achieve with the reshuffling of cabinets as months away from general elections.
Well, this has been long and coming. There have been protests on the streets of Ghana, especially end last year, with many protesters led by the opposition National Democratic Congress calling for the resignation of the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. In fact, there was a time when, sometime last year, the governing New Patriotic Party, NPP, had some of its members of parliament also pushing for the resignation of one of their own, that is the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Overall, there had been calls for the resignation of the finance minister, and also calls for the President Nana Akufo-Addo, to reshuffle his government. But not much has been done in that regard. In fact, the president really did not budge with those demands and those calls. So really, for many who've been commenting on this issue, they say it has been long and coming, and many of them also say that it is long overdue. There are some who believe that the president probably is doing this also to allow his party, the New Patriotic Party, to be on a better footing ahead of the elections, which is scheduled to take place sometime in December 2024.
All right. Okay, you can talk to us now about the changes that the president has made and, how those appointed are expected to work. I mean, the other portfolios that were, reshuffled.
So key amongst those affected by the reshuffling is the finance minister, like I already mentioned. The roads and highways minister was also reshuffled. In the past, we've had a lot of demonstrations regarding road network, in the country. He was also affected by this reshuffle. The Minister for Interior was also affected, but he was redesignated to another area. The Information Minister was affected, but he was given another position in the works and housing industry. So this is a significant reshuffle, a major reshuffle. It has been described since when President Akufo-Addo took over office in 2017. We've not seen any major reshuffle like we've seen what happened on 14th February on Valentine's Day Live.
And earlier on, in answering my first question, you said that, there had been protests. Does this say that Ghanaians are now pleased with these changes that the president has made? How are they reacting?
Yeah, many of them are pleased about it. There are those who think that this is going to be about nothing. They think it's just for the optics ahead of the December elections. In fact, the opposition, National Democratic Congress, NDC, says that instead of the president, the nation minister, they think that the president and the vice president rather should have resigned, because they think that in just 9 months, those newly appointed ministers will not be able to do any much, will not be able to do much in their various offices. In fact, a senior former minister who's a member of the governing political party, the NPP, has also stated that it's just 9 months elections. He does not see the need why the presidency reshuffle is done at this time. He thinks that 9 months of job basis, it's going to take some time for those newly appointed ministers to settle in their various ministries and be able to take effective decisions that would affect the overall well-being of the country. So he thinks that the reshuffle has been late in coming. The Pacific National Democratic Congress also thinks that the reshuffle has been late in coming, especially because in December 2023, we saw inflation went up to about 50%. Now inflation, they think that the president should have taken that critical decision, should have made that critical reshuffle at the time that we saw the peak of the country's economic crisis. Don't think that now it is late, and the majority of the Ghanaians also think that it is late, and they think that this is just for the optics, just for the December 2020 elections, which will be happening in just 1 month.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Maxwell Agbagba, Joy News TV correspondent in Accra.
Yes,
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have declared the opening of a new chapter of relations after over a decade of estrangement. In a joint meeting in Egypt's capital, Cairo, the two leaders say they are turning a new leaf in their relations. And this is the Turkish leaders' first visit to Egypt in over 10 years. Well, several bilateral agreements were also signed at that meeting in Cairo, with both leaders criticizing Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza and called for a ceasefire. The two countries cut ties back in 2013 after Mr. al-Sisi, then the defense minister, ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi, who was an ally of Turkey. In Malawi, the former ruling Democratic Progressive Party has apologized for accepting a cash kickback from a company under corruption investigation. In 2017, while still in power, the party was accused of receiving $85,000 from Pioneer Investment in a controversial food rations deal. Then former President Peter Mutharika was reportedly the sole signatory of the DPP account at the time. However, in a statement on Wednesday, the party spokesperson Shadrack Namalomba said they refunded the money out of regret for receiving the funds, which was tainted with these serious allegations. Well, the Pioneer Investments chief is currently facing corruption charges for allegedly inflating the amount of the contract with the Malawi Police Service to supply food rations. Rights group Human Rights Watch, HRW, is criticizing Cameroon's military for delaying to deliver justice over the killing of at least 21 civilians by state forces. In a statement, HRW decries the prolonged trial of soldiers implicated in the killings since December 2020, adding that the trial has been marred by irregularities. Well, the incident occurred in Gabu, at a village in the restive northwest region about 4 years ago. In February 2020, soldiers and armed vigilante members stormed the village, which they suspected was harboring separatist fighters. Well, the government initially denied its forces were responsible for killing civilians and torching homes. But after international pressure, an investigation into the incident ordered by the president, Paul Biya, showed that the soldiers and their aides killed 13 people. France says it will host a conference in Paris in April to raise aid for the war-torn country, Sudan. French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné said the dramatic humanitarian situation there should not be forgotten. Thousands of people have been killed since the war in Sudan broke out last year between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. The United Nations says more than 6 million people are displaced and over half of the population require immediate assistance. Well, the African Development Bank and the UNHCR, that's the UN Refugee Agency, says it is committed to deepening their collaboration for displaced people and host communities in South Sudan. This comes as refugees are being relocated to settlements where resources are already overstretched.
The war in Sudan is exacerbating an already dire refugee situation in South Sudan. The UN Refugee Agency and the African Development Bank say they want to deepen their partnership for these refugees and the communities accommodating them. Senior officials from the African Development Bank and the UNHCR The UN Refugee Agency paid a joint visit to Gendrassa refugee camp in South Sudan's Upper Nile state.
We are here in Maban, one of the places in South Sudan where we have a very significant influx of refugees and returnees from Sudan. Since April last year, this country has received more than 500,000 people, about 100,000 Sudanese refugees and about 400,000 South Sudanese returnees.
Since the start of the war in Sudan 300 days ago, more than 500,000 people have arrived in South Sudan, most of them South Sudanese who had been in Sudan for decades. Many are heading back to villages that barely have any services and where there is no humanitarian assistance available.
What we've seen is that there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of projects that they could be funding. We've heard from the authorities the importance of building a bridge that will expand the land that is available to refugees and to returnees. We heard of the possibility of building a dam that would reduce the impact of the floods that are affecting the region on a regular basis. So these are the kind of things that we humanitarian actors cannot fund, cannot mobilize funding for, but these are the kind of things that African Development Bank and other development actors can actually do.
Mary-Laurie Akiolugbade, the bank's Vice President for Regional Development, Integration and Business Delivery, and Raouf Mazu, UNHCR's Assistant High Commissioner for Operations, met with government authorities, refugees, and members of the host community.
We have decided to partner with the UNHCR because as part of the bank's strategy for addressing fragility and helping to build resilience in countries, one of the tenets is to leave no one behind. And we are extremely, and I think the international community should be very grateful to the government of South Sudan for their open policy in welcoming all refugees who are coming. We are really looking to help empower the youth and the women of this refugee camp and to give them opportunities to be really positive contributors in their host communities and bring about the skills, the knowledge that they had when the crisis struck, where they were coming from, and which they are bringing in the host communities.
The visit comes in the context of deepening partnership between the two institutions, strengthened collaboration among humanitarian and development actors globally, and an influx of more than 500,000 people fleeing the war in Sudan, including both Sudanese refugees and South Sudanese returnees.
Well, back here in Nigeria, as part of efforts to curb the rising drug abuse among youths in Kwara State in the north-central region, the government has organized the summit where speakers prefer lasting solutions to the menace. At the event held at the banquet hall in Ilorin, the speakers are calling for the establishment of more rehabilitation centers across the country to cater for the total cure of the addicts.
Kwara State is in the north-central region and shares borders with Kogi, which lies to the east, and Niger to the north. It's also bordered by states in the southwest, such as Ekiti, Osun, and Oyo, which make up part of the international border with Benin Republic. This makes it an easy transit route for illicit drug trafficking, especially cannabis, coming in from the south. Drugs in transit always find stops along the way, a possible reason for the rise in drug usage and abuse among youth in the north-central region, which is becoming a huge concern for the Kwara State government. And to that effect, the state government has organized a one-day summit to address some of the issues.
I am convinced that the various multi-pronged approaches we have decided to have will begin to yield positive results very soon.
Drug abuse is a social menace not only in Kwara State, but all over Nigeria. But due to the unwavering commitment of His Excellency Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak, we've been taking several steps, which includes both in the supply reduction and the demand reduction, to see that this menace is reduced in our society ranging from drug prevention programs, sensitization, and advocacy.
Officials of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency are in attendance. They appeal to all stakeholders to collaborate to fight the menace.
We are looking forward to partnering with ISOF globally. They will be able to come in here and train the trainers, those that are going to step down the evidence prevention strategy in all the local governments in the state. Once we can do that, in the next 1 or 2 years, we will know that we have enough prevention experts in the state that will help us carry out reduce the incidence of substance use that we have in the state.
Drug abuse is not peculiar to Kwara State or the North Central region. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on Citizenship and Leadership believes that more centers should be established across the country by state and local governments for rehabilitation of addicts.
Many people wish to seek professional help to overcome drug abuse, but they are unable to. We must therefore invest in providing those who need help with the tools they require to get it, while also establishing more professionally run rehabilitation centers. And this is where I believe state governments especially have a role to play.
Participants are calling on government at all levels and other community stakeholders to implement resolutions and suggestions from this summit.
The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, has added 13 new African cities to its network. These cities are said to be places that stand out for promoting lifelong learning among their inhabitants. All the new cities join the global network and were chosen on the recommendation of a jury of experts. They include Alexandria, Sharkia and Zefta in Egypt, Agadir, Essaoura, Fez in the Kingdom of Morocco, Bikok City, Marua, Yaoundé in Cameroon, and Sao Felipe, Cape Verde, Gagnoa in Cote d'Ivoire, Dakar in Senegal, and Chinoyi in Zimbabwe. And finally, on the program, a Kenyan teacher is currently attempting to set the Guinness World Record for the longest science lesson taught by an individual. Rose Tata Wekesa is aiming to teach for at least 50 hours. Or as at Thursday morning, Miss Wekesa had clocked just over 42 hours in the challenge. She is a biology and chemistry teacher at the St. Austen's Academy, an international school in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, but is undertaking this challenge at the Multimedia University of Kenya, and that's about 16 kilometers from the city. She says she hopes to continue her attempt until Friday and to motivate young ones in school who want to become teachers by showing a teacher can achieve greater things beyond the classroom. She also mentioned that she had stayed awake for 44 consecutive hours to just prepare her body for the challenge. Good luck to her. Well, that's it. That's how we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olaride.